You can drive through Newtown, Connecticut, a town etched with the familiar hallmarks of small-town America: maple trees lining quiet streets, storefronts with handwritten signs, a coffee shop where the barista knows your name. It's the kind of place where neighbors wave from porches, children bike without helmets, and life feels safe. But beneath that veneer of calm, there are stories no one tells, shadows beneath the snow, silence between the words. And sometimes, those shadows stretch farther than anyone expects. December 14th, 2012, dawned like any other winter day in Newtown. The cold air was sharp enough to make breath visible, and the ground was blanketed with a fresh layer of snow, untouched except for the occasional tracks of a stray dog or early riser's boots. The sun, pale and low, cast long shadows across the streets and rooftops. Families stirred awake in their homes, a father flipping pancakes, a mother packing lunches, children tugging on coats and mittens with sleepy fingers. The smell of coffee mingled with the faint scent of wood smoke from chimneys. There was a comfort in these small rituals, the predictability of morning routines that laced together the fabric of community. Sandy Hook Elementary School, nestled on a residential street, sat quietly, its brick facade dusted in white. Inside, classrooms were being readied for another day of lessons, laughter, and learning. Teachers laid out books, sharpened pencils, and prepared to greet their students, many of whom had walked these halls for years. Newtown, with a population just shy of 28,000, prided itself on community bonds. Residents were not just neighbors but friends, confidants, and caretakers. The town had faced tragedies before, a fire here, a loss there, but nothing on the scale that would befall it this day. Yet, no amount of closeness could guard against what was to come. The town was about to be forever changed. Far from the school, on a quiet cul-de-sac, lived Adam Lanza, a 20-year-old man whose life was shrouded in increasing solitude. Public records and investigative reports later revealed a portrait of a deeply troubled young man whose struggles with mental health were as complex as they were largely hidden. Diagnosed in his youth with Asperger's syndrome, Lanza's behavioral patterns exhibited intense social withdrawal, obsessive routines, and difficulty connecting with those around him. Lanza had once been described by family members as intelligent and curious, but also prone to anxiety and detachment. He had dropped out of college months before the shooting, choosing instead a life spent largely indoors, interacting primarily through video games and the internet. Neighbors recalled seeing him occasionally walking the streets but often avoided contact. Friends were few or non-existent. Family dynamics were strained. He lived with his mother, Nancy Lanza, but their relationship was distant. According to some reports, Nancy had taken on a protective role but also struggled to understand her son's growing isolation. Experts who later examined his history pointed to a combination of untreated mental health issues and obsessive fixations, particularly on mass shootings and weaponry. The FBI investigation found disturbing evidence on his computers, research into previous mass killers, weapon specifications, and violent imagery. But in a town where privacy was respected, these signs remained unnoticed or unaddressed by those outside his immediate family. In the early hours of December 14th, Lanza rose before dawn. Details uncovered later paint a grim picture of careful planning. He methodically gathered firearms, a Bushmaster XM15 semi-automatic rifle, 2 handguns, and thousands of rounds of ammunition, all legally acquired by his mother. His decision to take these weapons from his own home would turn fatal for Nancy Lanza herself. Neighbors heard nothing unusual. The stillness of the morning remained unbroken. Lanza's car was found later parked a few miles away from the school. It contained a handgun and additional ammunition, suggesting a premeditated intent and a level of preparedness that alarmed investigators. He then made his way to Sandy Hook Elementary, entering the school through a locked front entrance, which he breached with the rifle. His first targets were the staff members working in the school offices and hallways. Inside classrooms, children were beginning their day. Teachers moved between desks, reading stories, guiding lessons, unaware of the terror approaching. At approximately 9:35 a.m., the first gunshots rang out. Teachers who would later recount those moments described sudden, piercing noises that shattered the calm. Instinctively, many moved to shield their students, locking classroom doors and huddling with frightened children. One teacher, Victoria Soto, became a symbol of courage, reportedly confronting Lanza to protect her students, sacrificing herself in the process. Students screamed and cried as the unimaginable unfolded around them. Back at the Newtown Police Department, dispatchers received frantic calls from the school. The voice on the line was panicked, fragmented, describing gunfire, children in danger, a shooter inside. Officers assembled quickly, navigating icy roads under winter's early morning light. They knew time was critical. The first police units arrived on scene within minutes, but the layout of the school, the locked doors, and the chaos inside made immediate access difficult. As emergency responders approached, early eyewitness reports were contradictory. Some spoke of multiple shooters, others of explosions. The adrenaline-fueled chaos made facts hard to discern. Later investigations clarified that Lanza acted alone, but in the confusion, misinformation spread rapidly, complicating the initial response. Meanwhile, inside the school, survivors hid in closets and bathrooms, whispering reassurances to each other, waiting for rescue. For the residents of Newtown, the reality was still dawning. Parents rushing to the school found roads blocked by emergency vehicles, their phones ringing unanswered, and their hearts pounding with fear. Community members gathered, some weeping openly, others searching for loved ones or comfort. In those hours, the town's identity, safe, peaceful, connected, would fracture. The question lingered, how could this happen here? How could a quiet young man, raised in this community, slip into such darkness and bring devastation? The narrative that would unfold in investigations and psychological profiles exposed a complex mixture of untreated mental illness, social isolation, obsession, and access to lethal weaponry. But no simple answers existed, only layers of tragic human failure and loss. If you're still with us, take a breath. Imagine the weight of a town holding its breath, waiting for answers that won't come quickly. What do you think was missed? What signals were lost? Click that subscribe button and ring the bell because we dive deep into the first responders' frantic race against time, the heroes, the chaos, and the haunting unknowns. And hey, if you're watching while sipping your morning coffee, give a little nod to those teachers and staff who tried to protect the innocent. It's a story that demands our respect. At 9:35 a.m. on December 14, 2012, the calm of Newtown was shattered. The Newtown Police Department dispatch center lit up with frantic calls. One caller reported shots fired at Sandy Hook Elementary. Others spoke of children running, teachers screaming for help, and the unmistakable panic of chaos unfolding. The dispatcher's voice was steady but urgent, relaying crucial information as officers scrambled. Within moments, multiple units were en route, sirens piercing the cold morning air. Yet, as officers raced toward the school, the information was scant and conflicting. Was there a single shooter? Multiple? Were there hostages? No one knew. Officers arrived to a scene that defied clear description. Parents and community members flooded the streets outside the school, many frantic and desperate to find their children. Police quickly cordoned off the area, setting up perimeters and staging zones for ambulances and fire trucks. Inside, officers faced a labyrinth, classrooms, hallways, offices, and stairwells, all cloaked in confusion and fear. The layout of Sandy Hook Elementary complicated entry. Many classroom doors were locked, hallways narrow, and the building sprawling across multiple levels. Police officers, firefighters, and EMS personnel coordinated quickly, though every second was heavy with dread. The first officers to enter the building faced an immediate dilemma. The active shooter was inside, but the exact location was unknown. Without clear sightlines, officers had to move cautiously, balancing speed with safety. Tactical teams used their training, moving methodically down corridors, checking classrooms, communicating with dispatch and command posts. Many officers were volunteers, others career professionals, all united in a mission to stop the threat and save lives. Initial accounts from witnesses and survivors were harrowing but fragmented. Some described hearing gunshots followed by screams, others recounted locked doors, frantic hiding, and teachers shielding children. Conflicting reports suggested multiple shooters or explosives, spreading confusion among responders. This fog of war scenario is common in such emergencies, complicating decision-making. Police radios buzzed with updates and questions, but misinformation persisted. Outside the school, parents were gathered in growing numbers, some crying openly, others pacing anxiously. Emergency workers set up triage areas, preparing to treat victims. Bus drivers and school officials began coordinating reunification efforts, trying to account for every child and staff member. Inside, teachers had barricaded doors, silenced phones, and whispered reassurances to frightened students. The quiet bravery of those moments contrasted starkly with the violence elsewhere in the building. Firefighters and paramedics arrived shortly after police, confronting the challenge of tending to the injured amid an active shooter situation. They coordinated with police to enter safe zones, evaluate victims, and establish treatment areas. Many EMS personnel later recounted the difficulty of treating severe trauma in freezing temperatures while dealing with emotional families outside. One of the earliest officers on scene, Lieutenant Paul Vance, described the harrowing reality: classrooms where lives were lost, students hiding under desks, and teachers exhibiting extraordinary courage. Teachers like Victoria Soto, who confronted the shooter to protect her class, were hailed as heroes posthumously. Survivors described moments of terror interspersed with profound acts of humanity. Once the shooter was found deceased, having taken his own life, attention turned to securing the school. Crime scene investigators moved in, documenting every inch with painstaking care. Forensics teams collected ballistic evidence, analyzed trajectories, and cataloged spent casings. Digital evidence specialists recovered data from computers, phones, and security systems to reconstruct the timeline. Authorities faced the monumental task of providing accurate information while managing rumors. Press conferences were held, but initial details were limited to avoid misinformation. Social media erupted with speculation, complicating official messaging. Families struggled with the agony of not knowing. Many first responders later spoke of the emotional toll. Officers who found the victims faced lasting trauma. Counseling and peer support programs were established to address PTSD and grief. Within hours, investigators pieced together Lanza's movements. His mother's body was found at their home, adding a tragic layer. They reconstructed his path from home to school, the weapons used, and his final moments. While the physical evidence was meticulous, understanding the why proved more complex. Psychologists and behavioral analysts were called in. The community grappled with unanswered questions. If this chapter left you breathless, don't stop now. The race against time, the chaos, and the heroism are only part of the story. Next up, diving deep into the mind of Adam Lanza, what shaped him, and how could tragedy have been averted? Subscribe and hit that bell because we're peeling back layers that few have dared to explore. And if you're watching with someone, share this story, because understanding is the first step toward prevention. To understand how a young man could commit an act so devastating, we must look beyond the headlines and crime scene photos. We must peer into the quiet corners of his mind, the tangled pathways of isolation, obsession, and pain that no one fully saw, or perhaps no one could truly comprehend. This is the story of Adam Lanza's hidden world. Adam Peter Lanza was born on April 22, 1992, in Exeter, New Hampshire. To many, he appeared to be a bright and promising child. Early on, family and teachers noted his remarkable intelligence and curiosity. He was an avid reader, particularly fascinated by subjects like military history and weapons, interests that would later take on a dark significance. However, beneath this exterior lay signs of profound difficulty in social interaction and emotional regulation. Diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, a condition on the autism spectrum characterized by challenges in social communication and repetitive behaviors, Adam's world was often one of strict routines and limited social connections. By his teenage years, Adam's withdrawal from family and peers became more pronounced. Where many teens seek connection and identity among friends and schoolmates, Adam chose solitude. He attended high school but was frequently absent, withdrawing into video games and online worlds where control and predictability replaced the confusion of real life. Psychologists later noted his patterns of obsessive-compulsive behaviors and anxiety, which intensified his isolation. Nancy Lanza, Adam's mother, was a central figure in his life. Widowed in 2008, she devoted herself to caring for her son's unique needs. Described by friends as loving but overwhelmed, Nancy's attempts to manage Adam's increasingly difficult behaviors met with limited success. The relationship was complex, protective yet strained, marked by frustration and dependence. Nancy also owned the firearms used in the attack, legally registered and reportedly stored securely at home. While Adam had been diagnosed with Asperger's, there was no clear record of comprehensive mental health treatment addressing his growing anxieties and potential depression. Reports suggested obsessive fixation on violent events and weapons, alongside increasing withdrawal. His fascination with mass shootings, in particular, the Columbine High School massacre, indicated a troubling preoccupation. Experts suggest that untreated mental health disorders, compounded by social isolation and access to firearms, create a volatile mix. In hindsight, several signs pointed to Adam's deteriorating state. School officials, though aware of his challenges, saw no clear indication of violent tendencies. Neighbors described odd behaviors, such as disappearing for days, eccentric routines, and fixation on weapons, but no direct threats or actions. Family friends recalled disturbing conversations about violence and death, but these were dismissed or not fully understood. This raises questions. How could such warning signs go unheeded? What mechanisms failed? Adam's digital footprint, uncovered during the investigation, revealed a morbid fascination with prior mass shootings and weaponry. He reportedly researched the technical details of firearms, ballistic trajectories, and tactics used by previous shooters. This obsession, coupled with social alienation, created a feedback loop where violent fantasies grew unchecked. Psychologists later hypothesized that Adam saw these acts as a form of control or expression of rage he could not otherwise articulate. The broader societal context cannot be ignored. Some experts argue that the sensationalization of mass shootings in media can inspire vulnerable individuals. The extensive coverage of Columbine, Virginia Tech, and others provided blueprints that disturbed minds could emulate. Whether Adam consciously sought notoriety or was simply influenced subconsciously remains uncertain. Despite his struggles, Adam attempted to maintain some semblance of normal life. He enrolled briefly at community college but dropped out early. In Newtown, the community's efforts to include and support individuals with special needs existed but perhaps lacked the resources to reach Adam effectively. The absence of strong social ties and therapeutic intervention left him adrift. Experts analyzing the case drew on several psychological frameworks. Social isolation and alienation, prolonged exclusion from meaningful social contact exacerbates mental illness and risk behaviors. Obsessive-compulsive traits, Adam's rigid routines and fixations may have contributed to his inability to adapt or seek help. Depression and anxiety, untreated mood disorders often underlie violent acts, especially when combined with hopelessness. Access to lethal means, easy availability of firearms is a known risk factor in suicide and mass violence. Taken together, these elements depict a young man caught in a silent descent. A mind consumed by loneliness, confusion, and dark fixations, searching for meaning or release in a devastating act. The question remains, could intervention have saved him? Could the lives lost that day have been spared? Adam Lanza's case highlights the complexities in predicting and preventing such tragedies. No single factor explains his actions, rather, an intersection of mental health issues, family dynamics, social isolation, and access to weapons. Community awareness, improved mental health resources, and responsible firearm policies are often cited as keys to prevention. As investigators and psychologists struggled to piece together Adam's motivations, the community grappled with grief and the need for answers. Understanding the mind behind the massacre is painful but essential, not to excuse, but to learn. To honor victims by striving to prevent future horrors. If you find yourself questioning how this could happen, you are not alone. Mental health stigma, access to firearms, and social isolation form a tragic triangle we must break. subscribe and stay tuned. Next, we dive into the painstaking investigation that followed, revealing the meticulous work of law enforcement piecing together this dark puzzle. And hey, if you or someone you know struggles, reach out. Understanding saves lives. In the aftermath of tragedy, when silence descends over shattered streets and grief consumes a town, it is the investigators who carry the burden of uncovering truth amid chaos. Behind every shattered window and every whispered question lies painstaking work, evidence collected, timelines reconstructed, mysteries unraveled. This is the story of the meticulous pursuit of answers following one of America's darkest days. As first responders cleared the school and tended to survivors, investigators from the Connecticut State Police and FBI moved in to secure Sandy Hook Elementary. The priority was preserving the scene in a building transformed from a place of learning into a crime zone. Police established a perimeter, ensuring only authorized personnel could enter. Every classroom, hallway, and office was cordoned off for forensic examination. Investigators knew they were racing against time, evidence could degrade, memories fade, and the urgency of grieving families pressed heavily. The crime scene analysis quickly revealed a grim but clear sequence of events. Adam Lanza had entered through the front doors around 9:30 a.m. armed with a Bushmaster rifle and 2 pistols. He first encountered staff members in the main office area. From there, he moved into classrooms, firing shots that would claim 26 lives, 20 children and 6 adults, including teachers and the school psychologist. In classrooms such as Room 10 and Room 12, investigators found bullet casings, bloodstains, and signs of desperate attempts at defense, overturned desks, locked doors, and barricades. Each room told a story of terror and bravery. At Lanza's home, law enforcement recovered multiple firearms, including the ones used in the attack, alongside tactical gear, ammunition, and digital devices. Ballistics testing confirmed the weapons matched those at the scene. Investigators cataloged hundreds of rounds fired, examining trajectories and impacts to reconstruct the shooter's movements and firing positions. Each spent casing and bullet fragment added a piece to the puzzle. One of the largest efforts focused on Adam Lanza's computers, hard drives, and other digital media. Forensic experts sifted through terabytes of data, videos, photos, documents, seeking insight into his motivations and state of mind. They found extensive research on previous mass shootings, tactical manuals, and disturbing media. Notably, Lanza had watched videos and read reports about Columbine, Virginia Tech, and other attacks, indicating a fixation that experts later classified as identification with prior perpetrators. Medical examiners conducted a thorough autopsy on Lanza. Their findings showed no drugs or alcohol present, which some experts interpret as a sign that his actions were deliberate and calculated rather than impulsive or chemically influenced. The cause of death was self-inflicted gunshot wound, confirming he ended his own life at the scene. At the Lanza family home, investigators found Nancy Lanza deceased, killed before the school attack. Theories suggest that Adam killed his mother to remove obstacles and access her firearms. This act marked the beginning of his rampage, a private and personal tragedy preceding the public horror. Investigators conducted hundreds of interviews with survivors, first responders, neighbors, and acquaintances. These testimonies helped clarify timelines and behaviors. One key finding was the bravery of staff who protected children at great personal risk. Their accounts became central to understanding the human cost. Early media reports included unconfirmed details, speculations of multiple shooters, rumors of accomplices, complicating the public understanding. Investigators had to constantly correct narratives while focusing on factual, evidence-based conclusions. The pressure of national and international attention intensified their work. Multiple agencies collaborated: local police, state police, the FBI, emergency medical services, and forensic specialists. Task forces were formed to divide responsibilities: evidence collection, witness interviews, digital analysis, and public communication. This collaboration was essential in managing a complex, high-profile investigation. Experts in behavioral science reviewed the evidence to create a profile of Lanza's mental state. Their analysis combined crime scene observations with his history, aiming to understand triggers and warning signs. They concluded that Lanza's actions were premeditated, influenced by long-standing psychological issues, and fueled by a deep sense of alienation. Families of victims participated in investigations, providing DNA samples and personal information to assist identification. Community members contributed tips and information, demonstrating the collective effort to seek justice and understanding. Although Lanza's death closed criminal prosecution, the investigation prompted discussions on firearm regulations, mental health services, and school security. Officials reviewed laws related to gun ownership and storage, especially concerning access by vulnerable individuals. Reconstruction placed the shooting within a short but devastating time frame. From the moment Lanza entered the school to his death, roughly 5 minutes elapsed. In that brief window, the rapid movement, coordinated response, and desperate efforts to survive unfolded. Despite exhaustive work, some questions remain unanswered. Why did Adam Lanza choose Sandy Hook? What internal triggers propelled him? Investigators stressed that while physical evidence can reveal the how, the why lies in the complexities of the human mind and social context. For those involved, the work was not just technical but profoundly emotional. Handling evidence of child victims, hearing survivor stories, and witnessing the impact on families left lasting impressions. Departments increased mental health support for investigators to mitigate trauma. This investigation reveals the painstaking truth behind the headlines. If you're compelled by the relentless pursuit of answers amid heartbreak, subscribe now and ring that bell. Up next, we explore the community's mourning and the profound impact this tragedy had far beyond Newtown's snowy streets. And remember, in seeking truth, we honor those lost and those left behind. When the sirens finally faded and the guns fell silent, a town once defined by quiet streets and friendly faces was left shattered, a mosaic of grief, resilience, and searching for meaning amid unspeakable loss. This is the story of Newtown's mourning, the deep wounds carried by families and neighbors, and a community forever changed. As the news of the Sandy Hook shooting broke on December 14, 2012, shock rippled across the country and around the world. Television broadcasts cut into programming with urgent headlines: mass shooting at elementary school, children among victims. Social media erupted with grief, disbelief, and outrage. The scale of the tragedy, 20 children and 6 adults killed, was almost incomprehensible. For Newtown, the nightmare had arrived on their doorstep. Families of victims faced a dual heartbreak, the loss of a loved one and the exposure of their grief to national and international scrutiny. Mothers and fathers mourned children they would never see grow. Siblings grappled with emptiness and confusion. Parents who had sent their kids to school that morning now confronted a terrifying void. Support networks sprang up immediately, counseling services, hotlines, faith-based groups, offering solace but unable to erase pain. Churches, synagogues, and community centers opened their doors for vigils and memorials. Candles flickered against winter's cold as neighbors gathered to mourn together. Pastors, rabbis, and community leaders offered prayers and messages of hope. While faith comforted some, others wrestled with questions of why, a struggle common in the face of inexplicable tragedy. News organizations converged on Newtown, turning the spotlight on a grieving town. Coverage was intense, often compassionate but sometimes intrusive. Families were approached by reporters amid their anguish. Some welcomed attention to raise awareness, others withdrew for privacy. The media faced criticism for sensationalism and for inadvertently amplifying trauma. The shooting sparked a wave of national mourning. Flags were lowered to half-staff, memorial services were broadcast. President Barack Obama addressed the nation, calling for action and compassion. He famously held a town hall on gun violence, sharing his own grief as a parent. Political leaders debated measures ranging from gun control laws to school safety protocols. Newtown became the focal point for the national conversation on gun legislation. Advocates pushed for stricter background checks, limits on assault-style weapons, and safer storage requirements. Opponents cited Second Amendment rights and questioned effectiveness. The debate polarized communities but also mobilized activists on both sides. Schools nationwide reevaluated security measures. Some increased police presence, others installed metal detectors or enhanced surveillance. Newtown itself implemented structural changes, reinforced doors, lockdown procedures, and mental health resources. Though many were lost, some survived with physical and emotional scars. Teachers and students recounted harrowing escapes and acts of bravery. These stories became vital for healing and remembrance. The community faced widespread trauma, not only among direct victims but also first responders, medical personnel, and residents. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, depression, and anxiety became common. Long-term counseling and support programs were developed. Schools adopted trauma-informed approaches to support students returning after the tragedy. Multiple memorials were erected to honor victims. The Sandy Hook Permanent Memorial was designed as a peaceful space with personalized elements to remember each child and adult. Annual remembrance events continue to draw visitors and family members. Newtown's mourning illustrated the power of collective grief and resilience. Neighbors supported each other with meals, childcare, and companionship. Community projects fostered healing, such as art therapy, storytelling circles, and volunteer efforts. Despite efforts, the trauma lingered. Some families chose to leave Newtown, unable to bear daily reminders. Others stayed, driven by a desire to rebuild and reclaim their town. The process of healing was uneven and ongoing. Newtown's tragedy forced the nation to confront uncomfortable realities about violence, mental health, and community safety. It spurred discussions about balancing security with the need for compassion and openness. If this story moves you, hit subscribe and ring the bell to stay connected. Next, we explore the aftermath, the changes in law, policy, and how survivors and the nation grappled with prevention. Share your thoughts below. How can communities heal after such trauma? Let's keep the conversation going and honor those lost by working toward a safer future. In the wake of unfathomable loss, a community and a country are forced to confront not only grief but the urgent question, what now? The Sandy Hook tragedy ignited debates that transcended politics about safety, mental health, and the future of gun control. This chapter explores the ripples of change and the enduring struggle to prevent another heartbreak. Within days of the shooting, lawmakers and advocacy groups rallied to respond. President Barack Obama, visibly shaken, called for comprehensive gun control measures, including expanded background checks and a ban on assault weapons. Congressional hearings examined failures in the system and gaps in laws that allowed access to weapons used in the shooting. Central to the policy discussion was the role of assault-style rifles. The Bushmaster XM-15 rifle used by Adam Lanza was a focal point. Supporters of bans argued these weapons served no purpose outside military contexts and posed unacceptable risks to civilians. Opponents viewed such measures as infringements on constitutional rights. This debate polarized lawmakers and citizens, stalling some legislative efforts despite public pressure. In Connecticut, legislators quickly passed the Newtown Promise Act, aimed at enhancing school security and mental health services. Other states followed with varied legislation focusing on firearm restrictions, storage requirements, and emergency preparedness. At the federal level, President Obama introduced the Fix NICS proposal to improve the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. The tragedy underscored the urgent need to address mental health more effectively. Calls increased for better screening, treatment accessibility, and early intervention. Experts highlighted that many who commit such acts suffer untreated illnesses or fall through cracks in care systems. Funding for mental health programs was championed by advocacy groups and policymakers alike. Despite good intentions, policy implementation faced hurdles. Gun rights lobbying groups, such as the NRA, opposed many proposals. Political polarization slowed or blocked comprehensive reforms. Mental health funding remained inadequate in many regions. Families of victims became powerful advocates. Groups like Sandy Hook Promise formed, focusing on prevention, education, and policy change. Their voices personalized the statistics, humanizing the cost of inaction. Survivors also shared their stories to raise awareness and promote healing. Schools across America revamped safety protocols. lockdown drills became routine, often controversial due to psychological impacts on children. Physical security enhancements, such as bullet-resistant glass and secured entrances, were installed in many districts. Interestingly, gun sales surged in some areas after Sandy Hook, fueled by fears of impending restrictions. This paradox revealed the complexity of gun culture in the U.S., where tragedy often intensifies divisions rather than consensus. Innovations emerged, including improved surveillance systems, emergency alert technologies, and communication tools designed to respond faster to threats. Some districts experimented with armed resource officers or partnerships with local law enforcement. The core tension remained: how to respect constitutional rights while protecting public safety. This balance shaped national discourse and political campaigns in subsequent years. Survivors engaged in educational outreach, emphasizing signs of mental distress and promoting community vigilance. Healing programs incorporated trauma-informed care, peer support, and resilience-building activities. Media organizations reflected on their coverage practices, seeking to avoid sensationalism that could inspire copycat acts. Guidelines for ethical reporting on mass shootings were developed and promoted. Newtown's tragedy remains a defining moment in American history. It changed how society perceives mass violence, mental health, and community responsibility. For families, survivors, and responders, the journey continues, marked by sorrow, courage, and hope for a safer tomorrow. If this story resonates, subscribe and ring the bell to continue this journey with us. Up next, reflections on the killer's arrest, the community's ongoing resilience, and the lessons etched into history. And if you're inspired, share this video. Together, knowledge and awareness can be our strongest defense. The day the guns fell silent, the story did not end. For Newtown, for America, the echoes lingered, in hearts, in laws, and memories. This chapter is not just about an individual, but about the community shattered and the collective quest for healing, understanding, and hope beyond the darkness. Adam Lanza was found dead inside Sandy Hook Elementary, having taken his own life. His death meant no trial, no formal courtroom reckoning, leaving many questions unanswered. For investigators and the public alike, this absence complicated the search for justice and closure. Without direct testimony or confession, piecing together Lanza's motives fell to forensic analysis, interviews, and psychological profiling. His silence forced experts to look to his digital footprint, family background, and behaviors for insight. Though some clarity emerged, the full reasons behind his actions remain elusive, a chilling reminder of the depths of human suffering that can remain hidden. For Newtown's residents, the aftermath has been a lifelong struggle. Memorials and anniversaries serve as both reminders of pain and celebrations of resilience. The community wrestles daily with the balance between remembering and moving forward. Survivors and families have transformed grief into advocacy and hope. Organizations like Sandy Hook promise channel pain into action, focusing on violence prevention and education. Personal stories of healing inspire others confronting trauma. Sandy Hook ignited conversations about mental health, gun control, and school safety that continue today. While some progress has been made, ongoing mass shootings testify to the work still needed. The tragedy remains a somber benchmark for national discourse. 20 children, 6 adults, each a life cut short, a family forever changed. Beyond numbers are faces, dreams, and futures stolen. Remembering them demands more than remembrance, it calls for action. Understanding the intersection of mental illness, social isolation, and access to weapons requires empathy, not judgment. Communities must foster inclusion, early intervention, and support. Sandy Hook challenged America to examine its values and policies. The balance between liberty and security is delicate but necessary. The tragedy is a call to act thoughtfully and compassionately. The road ahead is long. Newtown's tragedy is etched into history not only as a moment of horror, but as a catalyst for change. Honoring those lost means committing to a future where such darkness can be prevented. If you've followed this story, thank you for honoring the memory of Newtown's victims. Subscribe and join our community to explore more stories that demand reflection and action. Share this video to spread awareness, because remembering is the first step toward change. Together, we carry the legacy forward.